Welcome back. You're still watching The Agenda. We continue with the really big story for the morning, of course, so that being that yesterday the court throwing out the Moti Group of companies' attempt to silence investigative journalists from the AmaBhungane Center. This is after the journalists launched an urgent court application against the group, which it sought to prevent them from reporting on leaked documents referred to as the Moti files. AmaBhungane, of course, has welcomed that South Gauteng High Court judgment. They have hailed the outcome as a victory for freedom of expression. Let's get now reaction. For that, we're joined by Advocacy Coordinator at the AmaBhungane Center for Investigative Journalism, Caroline James. Caroline, a good morning to you. Thank you so much for giving us time on The Agenda.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me on.
I think, let's start with the initial reactions, what the discussion was within the AmaBhungane Center once that judgment was handed down and you were able to read through it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for us, the judgment was a complete vindication of what we've been arguing since we first heard of the ex parte order that had been granted against us. I think Judge Sutherland made it very clear that the application that had been brought by the Moti Group to have an ex parte hearing heard was a complete abuse of process, and that their continued action in this piece of litigation was also an abuse of process when they tried to introduce new evidence and new arguments at a later stage, which the judge, even during the hearing, had thrown out completely as irregular. So from that aspect, the fact that the Moti Group has been abusing the court process in an attempt to silence us was a vindication. But more than that, I think the fact that Judge Sutherland went into detail on the rights of the media and how the rights interact, in this case, with other rights, other constitutional rights. We know that the Moti Group has been arguing about the right to privacy, but I think the judge really emphasized how important the rights of the media are, particularly when balanced against the right to privacy in this particular situation.
I don't know if you were able to see this, but just moments ago, I had a discussion with Mr. Dondo Mohajane, who is the CEO of the Moti Group. And one of the things that he said in his reaction to the judgment is what he feels were stolen documents, not leaked documents. I mean, what do you say to that wording that Mr. Mohajane uses here?
I mean, I'm not surprised to hear him use that word, because that is what the Moti Group have been maintaining consistently throughout the litigation and even in the discussions that we had prior to the litigation with him. We have always maintained that that wording is incorrect. And again, the judge has vindicated our views on that. If I could just read from the judgment, Judge Sutherland said that the Moti Group contend that AmaBhungane are at best for them accomplices after the fact to theft. This belief is incorrect. And Judge Sutherland then goes on to discuss how I know that the Moti Group believes that their former employee, Clinton Finiko, stole documents from them. But Judge Sutherland also makes it very clear that Finiko's conduct, whether or not he is our source, which we've never confirmed or denied, Finiko's conduct is absolutely irrelevant to the right of AmaBhungane to possess those documents. That there is no sense that if the documents were stolen, that we have no right to them. And the judge also cast questions on whether those documents have been stolen or not. That's never been proven. I know there is a case pending against Clinton Finiko, but it hasn't been concluded. And so to use that word is very inflammatory. It's both inflammatory and incorrect, as Judge Sutherland pointed out.
What happens now? Because what we've just heard from the Moti Group CEO moments ago is that they're considering approaching the Constitutional Court on the matter. What are the next steps that AmaBhungane then takes? I mean, are we looking at you going ahead and publishing these files even while the Moti Group attempts to approach the Constitutional Court?
I think we would have to wait to hear from the Moti Group lawyers, who would be in touch with our lawyers or with us directly about their next steps, whether they are intending to appeal the decision. But at the moment, we now go back to the position that we were before the ex parte application was granted. We now are entitled to have access to the documents and are entitled to publish. But I think what's also very important is that because we've been barred from accessing the documents during this process of litigation, means that our journalists haven't been able to conduct any sort of research or follow-up investigations on those documents. They haven't been able to prepare questions to send to the Moti Group. So it has definitely hindered our ability to report on the matter. And it does mean that there is not going to be anything sort of instantaneous, because the processes of investigative journalism have to go ahead. So we will obviously commence on that, with that immediately again. Our journalists are back hard at work trying to assess these documents and understand what are the public interests in the documents, and we will then go ahead. But we will just have to wait to hear what the Moti Group's next steps are.
Another argument that Mr. Mahajane is putting on the table when we spoke to him just moments ago is he obviously speaks to the right to privacy, and he says a lot of personal information as well has been accessed by investigative journalists at AmaBhungane. I mean, where do you draw the line then between what needs to be exposed for for reasons of freedom of expression, and then where that line then becomes, an invasion of their right to privacy?
Certainly. I mean, I know also in the hearing, the Moti Group's legal team argued very strongly that there is no hierarchy of rights, and that's certainly correct. But a court always has to assess how the rights need to be balanced. There's a constitutional process when two rights are in conflict and how to balance them. And I think that what needs to be recognized is investigative journalism has always relied on leaks of documents, accessing huge troves of documents, which include documents that may be irrelevant, documents that are intensely relevant to the public interest, and documents that may be, as you say, private information that isn't relevant. I know the Moti Group is arguing that there's sort of birth certificates and other private information. All investigative journalists will get that sort of trove of documents and assess it, and would certainly be bound by our ethical and professional obligations to not report on documents that are very clearly private and that are of no interest. So I think that looking at AmaBhungane's track record, that has never happened. It's never been the case where very intimate and private details have been published as a result of leaked documents. And the way that the press is set up in South Africa is that if that were to happen, there are immediate steps that can be taken, and then journalists would be held accountable. That is how it's operated in the past. And, I can confirm that there would be nothing that AmaBhungane would be publishing that would not be in the public interest and that would constitute an unjustifiable violation of the right to privacy. And I think it's important to mention that that's the way that the rights are balanced, that there are some justifiable invasions of the rights when it is done so in the public interest.
Yeah, we'll be watching closely then to see what happens, whether or not you're going to be able to publish those files, and of course how then this possible tug of war really continues with the Moti Group, as they confirmed to us this morning that they will be approaching the Constitutional Court. But Caroline, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and we really do appreciate it. Caroline James, of course, is with the AmaBhungane Center for Investigative Journalism. She is an advocacy coordinator with the center.